Thank you for joining us, and welcome to DC Dialogues. DC Dialogues is our open forum where we discuss current events and issues we find compelling. And then we grab some really smart people and have a thoughtful discussion, fairly uncensored. So without further ado, here's your host, Bix Hirigoyen.
Welcome back, everyone, and welcome into our podcast studio here at Decision Counsel once again. Really excited to introduce this week's guest for our Young Professional series, Gyasi Barber. Gyasi, thanks for joining us, and really excited to be talking about getting involved in the community with you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to talk through this.
Definitely. So I want to start. You yourself work at Indeed. I know Indeed is known for a lot of the good work that they do in getting their employees involved with the community. Could you speak a little bit to what some of those programs look like, and what are some of the ones that you have been particularly invested in during your time with the company?
Definitely. Well, a little background. Indeed's mission is to help people get jobs. And that's really what drew me to the company initially. I think that finding a job is probably the most important thing that somebody's going to do in their life. And the company wants to embody the mission, not just in how we help people, but also, what we do with our employees. So I would say the main thing that we do, and that we've really increased over the last several years, is just our ability to give back to different communities, different initiatives, different causes. One thing that speaks to me, and this just happened about a year ago, but before COVID, I feel like that's always what we say, before COVID, in Australia was when the brush fires happened. And we have an office we have a couple of offices in Australia, but one specifically in Sydney. And we were able to rally lots of people around us to donate money, because we couldn't necessarily volunteer there directly, but also encourage our Australian Indiedians to go out and give back to the communities that they're in. So we really always try to rally around what's going on in society, whether it's the Black Lives Matter movement or our different inclusion resource groups and the initiatives that they have that they're doing. So there's really lots of ways that Indeed helps its employees give back to their local and global communities.
Mm-hmm. And so when you're looking at, a lot of times there are these things that are going on around the world. You mentioned like the Australian bushfires that were happening last year. When there's not necessarily a particular cause that is at the forefront, that is being pushed on the front page of the newspaper and all that kind of stuff, how do you encourage young folks to get involved and find a cause that means something to them if there's not something that's already evident to them right off the bat?
I think it's really interesting. I myself live in Manhattan and in East Harlem, which is a really interesting community. And lots of our offices are sort of based in larger cities. Sometimes people feel that it's more difficult to get involved in your community when your community is tens or hundreds of thousands of people. But I really encourage people to start with their local community. I think it's important to go out and see what community organizations are in your community, see what nonprofits are in your community, because there's bound to be places that you can go to help out. It could be a nursing home, it could be a community center, it could be a tutoring program. So it's really important just to go out into your community, especially if you plan to live there for a few years, because you don't get out what you don't put in. So if you don't put anything into your community, you're not bound to get anything out of it.
What was the first opportunity that you can remember that drew you into the world of service, or the first time that post your education in the professional world that you really were able to dive in and get involved with a particular cause?
Yeah, well, I got my bachelor's in music at Syracuse University, and then I went on and got my master's also in music at the New England Conservatory in Boston. And I found myself working at an energy startup. So it was trying to tackle the issue of climate change and emissions in the residential sector. Mm-hmm. And even though that job was it was a lot of fun, but the people there were really mission driven, which is sort of what pushed me to want to work with other mission driven people. And I would say that the first time was the climate march, which I believe was back in 2015. And that was the first time that really, as a professional, I went down with coworkers from Boston, Connecticut, the Hudson Valley, and we went and we marched in the climate march. And it sort of blurred the lines of what you're supposed to do as an employee, as a professional, and then as a community member. And that really excited me. It gave me a lot of energy, encouraged me to continue to fight the good fight. And I've been doing that ever since.
And you mentioned kind of that interesting nuance of tiptoeing the line between being an employee, but also at the same time remaining passionate about the cause that you're getting involved with. I would imagine, especially at a company like Indeed, where there are so many people around, everyone is inevitably going to have different interests, different groups they want to help out with. How do you continue to push the conversation forward if there's ever any conflict between folks wanting to go one way or the other, or spend their time in different places?
You know, it's an interesting question. And I really think it's related to courage and conviction. And what I mean by courage and conviction, it's really understanding why you're doing something and then putting together a plan. And that can be, a physical plan, a written out plan of how you're going to get to that goal. Mm-hmm. And people really respond well to individuals that have a goal, that they can see what their goal is and they're going to get behind that. So if you really believe in something, then you just have to continue to bring it up, talk about it, ask questions, challenge maybe other people's thinking about that goal, about that initiative. And if you don't have anybody that's helping you, then you just need to keep moving and keep doing what you need to do. It's obviously easier if you have people behind you, but everybody can do something.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been in a position where you have had to really explain to someone why you are getting involved with a certain cause? I know that can be a difficult thing for people sometimes. You talk about having conviction, but even getting to that point, sometimes you need to have the courage to speak up in the first place and say, this is something that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, I think it always comes back to climate change. There's still a lot of people out there that don't necessarily believe, whatever that means, in human-made climate change. Mm-hmm. And I remember just vividly, I was out in New York City. It was probably 1 or 2 in the morning. I had been out with friends, and I was really hungry. And so I went to Burger King. I was a vegetarian at the time, and so I went to Burger King. And they had just started selling the Impossible Whopper. Mm. So I ordered the Impossible Whopper, and this cashier rung up the order. It was getting made. It was taking like a little while, but I didn't really mind. And he asked me, "Why do you order that?" And I said, "Oh, well, I'm a vegetarian, and eating less meat is better for the environment. It uses less water, takes up less energy." And he goes ahead and says, "But that's not going to make any difference. That one decision is not going to make any difference." And I wasn't in, the place to debate at that time. I just wanted my Whopper. But I just asked him, "Well, I feel that this is something that I want to do and a decision that I want to make. So what would you do if there was something that you wanted to make change for? How would you try to make change? What decision might you make?" And he didn't respond because it's 2 o'clock in the morning and nobody's trying to think heavily about that. But I really think that it's important that when you believe in something, it's bad to just attack individuals for their beliefs. Right? We see it on social media. We see it on the news all the time. It's more important to just ask questions about why people think the way they do, and not necessarily to insinuate that the way they think is wrong or right or either way. So I just listen to people. I ask them questions, and I just make them think. I don't try to get them to think the way that I do. But I just want them to think critically about the decision they're making, and then I just continue on and do my thing.
I think that's a great way to think about it and approach it, because I feel like so often people tend to think mostly about themselves. And so whether it's getting involved with your community or, certainly getting into debates surrounding the sphere of politics, a lot of the arguments generally center around, well, I want you to do this for XYZ reason, but flipping the script and thinking about it more as, okay, well, if you were in that position, what would you want to do to help out whatever your particular situation is? I think that's a great way to look at it. As we go forward and, fingers crossed, things begin to get a little bit, quote unquote, back to normal. How do you encourage folks to keep up this trend? Like you said, having a lot of downtime, it's really easy to think, okay, this particular day, I can allot this amount of time to volunteering versus pursuing another passion versus doing anything else. How do you keep that going as we come out of this pandemic?
I think people need to really consider what they want to do and the amount of time that they want to give. And time could be seen in multiple ways. It can be seen in money, right? There's lots of people, Mackenzie Bezos, for example, who just give a lot of money. And then there's other people that give a lot of time. And it's really all about the proportion of time that you give to other people that you also think about giving time back to yourself. And so really what I've been encouraging people to do is, what are your interests? So maybe you're interested in LGBTQ rights, or you're interested in, the wage gap, or male-female equality in the country, and just go to Google. Google's great, right? And so just search the cause that you're interested in, the city that you're in, and then volunteer opportunities, and just learn. If you can't volunteer, give to those communities, and then if you choose to do so, share that you're giving. I love to share different causes, petitions, fundraisers, all of that stuff, and that's really important. But you have to choose one. Right now, I'm actually working on a blog series about the racial wealth gap in the United States. And so my focus specifically is on what organizations are dealing with this. How can I give to those organizations? How can I volunteer for those organizations? And I think it's important to find your niche. It's just like finding your job. You have to find your niche into what you want to give towards, because you can't give to everything, unfortunately. At least most people can't.
Well, would love to take a look at your blog when we get the chance. And certainly if you pass it along, we will share it with all of our viewers and our audience tuning in. What have been the best opportunities that you've had a chance to be involved with via Indeed?
Oh, there's so many. Indeed is really, they're such a great company to work for if you want to make an impact just by working there. But even if you want to make an impact other ways, I would just say in the last 6 months, one thing that Indeed allows you to do is log volunteer hours. And so you can actually log volunteer hours. So I logged the 2 hours that I volunteered on Martin Luther King Jr. Day into our system. And then you can actually convert those hours into money to then donate to another charity. So it's basically like a double dip. So that was great. I really look forward to doing more of those. Indeed also partners with lots of organizations through our inclusion resource groups. One specifically that I love is called Gem, and it's an organization for girls that are looking to get into engineering and math and just overall like the STEM industry. Mm-hmm. And I've actually been able to be on 2 panels to talk to just young Black girls, high school, early college age, just to show them what it looks like to be a Black worker in corporate America. And maybe they work at Indeed, maybe they decide to work at another company, but they can sort of see what is out there. So I get lots of those different opportunities. I recently was on a panel for Houston Tillotson University, which is a historically Black university in Austin, where we're headquartered. And we just got to talk to students about, getting into the workforce. They were all graduating seniors. They were able to ask us questions. And so there's lots of opportunities to do that. We have a specific team, our social impact team, that really does excellent work and is continuing to be grown and invested into. So, it's really easy if you want to put in a few hours of time.
Yeah. It sounds like there's definitely plenty of opportunity. And I'm particularly curious also about the partnership that Indeed has formed with Goodwill and how that has been woven into the everyday atmosphere at the company. Can you talk a little bit what that effect has been like since that partnership came into play?
Yeah. So again, this was pre-COVID. So I believe it was 2000, I think it was still 2019 when that partnership launched. I was lucky to go to our HR basically summit called Indeed Interactive in May. I remember because it was the same weekend as South by Southwest. So that was a pretty cool juxtaposition of experiences. And the CEO of Goodwill, I forget his name, Steve something. He was actually one of the speakers on the main stage, and they were launching the partnership. And as a person that's been in college and has lived in cities and shopped at Goodwill and donated to Goodwill, you think of Goodwill as a thrift shop. Probably made very famous by a Macklemore song, "Thrift Shop," and that's sort of what I thought of them as. And I was able to learn so much more about what they actually do for communities. They have a huge wing that really deals with employment, because as I said before, employment is one of the most important things and one of the clearest signs of getting out of poverty. And so what Goodwill and Indeed now do is they help community members find jobs at Goodwill. We help individual Goodwill locations have hiring events where people can come in and get jobs at Goodwill. And then we also have a specific landing page where if you go to the Goodwill website and you're looking for a job that maybe isn't at Goodwill, you can just go right to the Indeed Goodwill partnership page and start looking for jobs. So it really makes a lot of sense. And it's been a really great partnership overall. We've helped a lot of individuals get jobs at Goodwill, through Goodwill, and just continue to drive their impact. And since Goodwill is like an international organization, we're hoping to push that out, globally, which would be just a really great feat and a really great impact.
Yeah, thanks for speaking to that a little bit. I think it's a really cool partnership and looking forward to seeing what they can do in the future. And clearly, you have been very involved in your community and you have a passion for this kind of work, as I'm sure many folks out there do. There's always also going to be a faction of people out there that are not as interested, that really don't bother with getting involved. What is your pitch to someone that may think that way in terms of trying to convince them that what you're doing might seem small or insignificant, but you really are helping?
That's a great question. And I've always been a person that thinks very emotionally and deeply about other people, sometimes even more than myself. And so over the past year, obviously, I've dealt with, anxiety and depression and everything like that. And my mom will call me and she'll ask me like how I'm doing. She's very opposite. She doesn't really think about like the globe and the world and all the people in it. So I'll say I'm tired. I have a lot of things on my mind. And she's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm fine, but the world is not."
Yeah.
And so I think it's important for people that maybe don't see the value in volunteering, just to, again, ask questions and say, besides yourself or besides your family, what do you care about? And I think that everyone can find something that they care about. And once you figure out what you care about, then you can give to that. I think that there's really good organizations that sort of tug at the heartstrings and say, look at this sad puppy that could die today. Give some money to this puppy. So whether it's, children or animals or, sort of anything, there's something that people are going to care about. and you just have to ask them about it. And I really think that the more that people think about the community that they're in and the world overall, the more empathetic they're able to be, the better it's really going to be for everyone. And so once people figure out what they want to think about and what they want to care about, then it's going to be a lot easier to give to those types of organizations.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Gyasi, for your insight today. We really appreciate it. Glad to have you with us. Thank you to the audience for tuning in. If you have any questions at all, hit us up at Decision Counsel and we'll get everything answered that we possibly can. So again, thank you, Gyasi Barber. It's been great talking to you today. Hopefully we get to do it again soon. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Good time.